Hello and welcome to the Scouting Board Episode 8. Today we will be looking at our first quarterback of the 2023 NFL Draft Class. We're not going to look at the top just yet. Bryce Young will be coming shortly. We're going to look at some of the quarterbacks, hopefully, first up. CJ Stroud will not be an episode that's coming soon due to him playing in the college football playoff. Obviously, if we want to analyze a player fully, and all those players of those four teams, TCU, Michigan, Georgia, and Ohio State, any players from those teams, which obviously a lot of big prospects coming from Georgia and Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU too, those players won't get an episode. Any players from them won't get an episode until after the college football playoff is done, or that team has played their semifinal game, and got eliminated. Those won't come until then. So hold your horses on any of the players from those teams. We'll get to those players, especially CJ Stroud. We'll have an episode, but not just yet for them. So today we have every quarterback pretty much available to look at that's going to be a draft pick this year, besides for Stetson Bennett, who probably won't get drafted until late, and CJ Stroud. So today we're going to be looking at Anthony Richardson, the quarterback from Florida. He's pretty much the consensus either third or fourth quarterback. Him and Will Levis had a lot, depending on the publication, have been flipped back and forth. But after Young and Stroud, the QB crop kind of falls off a little bit, at least in my opinion, and I think a lot of opinions of other publications, is that Stroud and Young are kind of those guys that are going to be in the top 10, and then everybody else is kind of after that. Richardson and Levis kind of snuck into the first round in some mock drafts, but in a lot of them, most of the time, Richardson's going to be the fourth guy, and he's the guy that falls into the second, third round type of range, which makes sense when you evaluate him. So Richardson's a really big guy. He's only a one-year starter, but he's a redshirt sophomore. He's 6'4", 232, a really big prototypical quarterback, the type of body type that you want in a quarterback nowadays in the NFL. But what really makes Richardson special is that he's only 21 years old. He's very young for his age. As I said, he's a redshirt sophomore coming out. So he's declaring early, pretty confident. And what makes him such an intriguing prospect right now is that with all that size, 6'4", 232, you'd expect he's probably going to be your prototypical pocket passer. He's going to be just a tall guy in the pocket that doesn't move around a lot. Absolutely the opposite. Anthony Richardson is the farthest thing from a strict pocket passer, just stand in the pocket no matter what. He is a runner first and foremost, and I think that is probably his best ability when looking at him. So let's get to, as you know, in this show, we go through the pros, the cons, the comparisons, then we look at a little bit of film. I give you my grades. If you haven't watched any previous episodes, that's how it works. So we're going to go down that route again. And we're going to start out with Anthony Richardson's pros. And to start off with his pros, we have to look at his unofficial 40 time. As we know, the combine hasn't happened yet, so he hasn't run his official combine 40. But what he has listed down on numerous sites is that he has run a 4.48 40, and this does track with his game film as well. He's extremely, extremely, extremely fast when he runs out of the pocket and decides to tuck and run. Dude's insane. And I mean, to be 6'4", 232 and have that fast of a 40 is just insane. That's wide receiver numbers on a quarterback. And when you have that big of a body and you could run that fast, there's just countless things you can do. I mean, if Anthony Richardson doesn't work out as a quarterback, he could totally shift to a tight end role, or he could shift to a wide receiver role. That's what makes him so valuable in this draft. And again, what I said about Dalton Kincaid is that he could switch from tight end to receiver, and that's what made him very valuable. You're seeing a lot of players come out in today's drafts and in the past few drafts that are so athletic because, I mean, players are just getting just more and more athletically freakish with all the new ways you can develop yourself into a good player nowadays. So Anthony Richardson is a guy that could pretty much play any position just because of his size and strength and speed. If you had any of the traits of Anthony Richardson in any position, he'd be very, very valuable. I think if you put him as a tight end, probably, and like taught him how to catch, Anthony Richardson, probably a first round talent. Same with a wide receiver. At quarterback, he's up there as well and has performed pretty well, but really what makes him stick out so much is his athletic ability. That's what's getting him all the draft attention and his rushing ability. If he didn't have that ability, if Anthony Richardson was, let's say, a 6-foot guy, he was like 190 and he was putting up the statistics in film that he was putting up now, he'd probably still get drafted, but he'd be more in the 6th round to 7th round type of range, I'd think. Really what puts him apart from the pack is his athletic ability, something that got Josh Allen a success story, obviously. Drafted very high, didn't have a lot of great statistics. I love to bring up Josh Allen when we're looking at quarterbacks that don't have great statistics in college but are just freakish athletes that worked out, because those type of players, are tough to evaluate, but you have to look and see if those players can develop under the right circumstances. Josh Allen was a player that could develop under those right circumstances. Blah. Can't speak right now. God. But Malik Willis, again, a guy last year who I evaluated, and I didn't like him at all. I saw him as a player that, probably couldn't be developed. But again, freakish athlete, really good runner, great passer, strong arm. But I said he couldn't develop. I think he's one of the lowest grades, maybe the lowest grade that I've ever given on this podcast. And so far for Malik Willis, it hasn't worked out. So it's really a 50-50 coin flip when you're looking at these type of guys. Richardson has all the physical tools. It's just he's going to have to learn how to be more of a consistent passer and develop those skills. And that's what makes him a really raw talent. But just great speed. There's a lot of plays out there on Anthony Richardson's reel. Pretty much any game you can pick from him. He had a really good run against Eastern Washington, where he is going to step up in the pocket a little bit, and then he sees that hole in the line, and he's just going to burst right through. And then the speed he has, he just turns on a switch in his mind, and it goes. And the kid runs. It is reminiscent of a Cam Newton type of run, how Cam in like the 20s, in his MVP season, when you'd see Cam just step up in the pocket, see the slightest opening ever, and then you just see him go. And Cam is a huge guy, really big body, but one of the best runners in NFL history. And Anthony Richardson has the same, if not maybe more, of a burst as Cam Newton had, because Cam Newton was a really physical runner, and Richardson can be that. Richardson has elusiveness. That's one of his pros, one of his strengths. But at the same time, a lot of his runs, he'll have those juke moves that are reminiscent of a Lamar Jackson type of runner. And just the combination is absolutely insane. I don't understand, like a 4.48, when you're looking at like the fastest players ever in the NFL, you'd think a 4.48 maybe isn't that fast. But for the quarterback position, especially at 6'4", 232, that is a really I mean, that's a running back 40. Most running backs are going to have 40s around 4.4s. Around 4.48 is the back half of a 4.4, but that's a running back type of number. I think the highest 40 in last year's combine was a 4.33, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I think that was Pierre Strong's 40. So only 0.15 behind is Anthony Richardson, coming in at 4.48 as a quarterback at 6'4", 232. Absolutely huge, great runner. He's effective on the run. If we go on to Anthony Richardson's stats real quick, he was a one-year starter, had some time in 2021 where he did play, but one-year starter ultimately. In 2022, this past year, he had 103 rushing attempts for 654 yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground. His longest run was 81 yards, so just burst out and go. The previous year, his longest run was 80. So he's had a tendency to just break out into open field and just go. And I mean, that's where you wouldn't expect a quarterback that big to have that breakaway speed. It's kind of, you remember that Terrell Pryor run where he went like 99 yards, that really, really famous run from the early 2010s. Anthony Richardson in college has just broke those off like casually, which is really impressive for a quarterback of his size. And again, he's averaging, in 2021, he averaged on 51 carries in 401 yards. He averaged 7.9 yards a carry. And then in 2022, he averaged 6.3. So out of the pocket, dude's going to run you over, or he's going to run by you, or he's going to make you miss. He could do all three for Anthony Richardson. And it's just really, really impressive coming out of a quarterback that's, you wouldn't really expect that out of. He's just a total athletic freak. Now, if we get out of the run game and we get to his next pro, is that kid has cannon. And we tend to see this in quarterbacks that can run a lot. I know I've brought up Josh Allen and Malik Willis a lot, but I'm going to bring him up again. Both of them, great runners, but huge arm. For some reason, you don't see a lot of quarterbacks nowadays that come out of college that don't have a big arm but can be amazing on the run. Again, Lamar Jackson, his arm strength has been questioned in the NFL. He's been able to get it done. But in college, he threw bombs all over the place at Louisville. So you tend to see rushing quarterbacks have a huge arm. Trey Lance, another one. I was really impressed by him at the start of this series. I believe he was the first episode I ever did. What inspired me to do this series was Trey Lance. Just looking at him and watching his film was absolutely insane. Now it hasn't translated over to the NFL just yet, and that's something that we have to see. But Trey Lance was one of the best runners at the FCS level in college, but at the same time had a deep ball like no other, could place it just centimeters away like a Joe Burrow throw. Just perfect placement on great deep balls. And Anthony Richardson has a big arm that's very reminiscent of Malik Willis' arm from last year. Really strong, could probably bomb at 70 yards any play if he wanted to, but at the same time has inconsistencies in that throw. Now, Anthony Richardson, if you draft him, you're going to have to be able to develop that consistency with his throws. He's had a lot of throws through this past season that have been centimeters away, perfect like throws down the sideline. And he has a lot of throws down the sideline, not a ton of stuff in the middle, which is a little bit concerning, but has a lot of stuff on the sideline where it's flashes, where you can see, okay, this guy can be a really good passer with just throwing goes down the sideline centimeters away. And that's one of the best throws you can do as a quarterback, is just a simple go and putting the ball where only your wide receiver can get it. That's one of the most impressive plays you can see as a evaluator looking at a quarterback. And it's a telling play that to see if a quarterback can be that, not just a game manager, but an outstanding, just athletic anomaly that can place the ball wherever he can, just precision. And that's one of the best traits you can have, because you can't, as I've said before many times, you can't develop a big arm. You can't. You can work out a bunch. You can maybe improve your throw by 5 yards here and there, but you're not going to get someone who's a game manager like a Sam Ehlinger, say, and have him develop 20 yards more of throw power over a season or a couple seasons, which is what you're going to need as a rookie quarterback. You're going to have to develop quick, especially when you're drafted that high, like Anthony Richardson is going to be in the first to third round range, most likely. You're going to have to develop that arm strength fairly quick, even for a raw talent. Now, he already has that. So when you already have that big throw talent, all you have to do is develop the brain, get him to make better decisions with that arm strength, and to control that arm strength. And that's something that can be taught. Good offensive coordinators, good quarterback coaches, like Brian Dable did with Josh Allen, they can key into that. And if the quarterback isn't so erratic that you can fix that, then you're going to have a good quarterback on your hands, and that's going to be a good pick. So with guys like Anthony Richardson, when you're picking them, you need to make sure that he is a player that you have the coaching staff, the coaching capacity, the coaching smarts to fix parts of his game and improve parts of his game that are struggling, that are lacking, that you need to have in the NFL. Anthony Richardson's a raw prospect. That's what comes along with it. But he has a ton of talent. And the big arm is clearly shown through any of the film that you watch with him at Florida. And again, good deep ball placement, like I said before. That's one of the things about Anthony Richardson is that he's not incredibly accurate with his throws, but when he's throwing a deep ball, it seems that he's more comfortable throwing it up 40 yards downfield into tight coverage and placing it really well than he is on short throws, medium throws, which, big is pretty concerning because first and foremost, your quarterback, you're going to want him to have the short throws down first and the medium throws because you can live with a short and a medium throw because that's what's going to drive you downfield, methodically, just long drives, which are good for the team completely. Long strikes all the time aren't usually the most beneficial thing. But he already has that deep ball down. And that's a tough thing that, teaching quarterbacks how to do that. Sometimes they never learn how to do that. And, sometimes that's all right. Drew Brees, lived off of the intermediate type of routes. And not to say that he didn't have a deep ball, but it wasn't the best thing ever. He, especially in the back half of his career, just lived off of short intermediate routes. Brady did a bunch of that when he was in New England. He had the deep ball too, but short, intermediate, medium type of routes, not all these posts and just deep goes and all that type of stuff. It was more curls and, check downs to the running back in the flat or, corners. That was more of type of, that's the game where Anthony Richardson lacks just a little bit and will need to improve. But his deep ball is something that is really, really pretty and something that is super impressive to the eye. And him already having that is really good. Now, to see if that translates to the NFL, which I think it will, obviously, you're going to have tighter coverage all the time in the NFL. Better players, you're going to have tighter coverage. Good thing he played in the SEC, so we've seen corners, a lot of corners from the SEC, especially like Bama and LSU. They're the ones that are going to produce a bunch of corners, and those are the guys you're going to be playing against in the NFL. So he's already played against the younger side of the NFL that he's coming into. He just doesn't know it yet. That's what you do when you play in the SEC. The Georgia corners, obviously. Georgia's insane with their defense. So he's already had that experience. So I'm not too worried that his deep ball is not going to, in his deep ball placement, is going to suffer so much. In the NFL, I think that's going to translate pretty well over for Anthony Richardson. It's just he needs to work on his more intermediate stuff. Richardson's also a really good improviser outside the pocket. This comes with being a solid runner. If you have the ability to run, the defense is going to be, concerned with you running, so they're going to leave wide receivers open more in the flat when you're going to roll outside of the pocket. Richardson knows this, and he baits guys. He's really good when he gets outside the pocket to kind of just, get 6 yards here and there. And when I'm talking about the intermediate stuff, I'm talking about more in the pocket. But he knows how to use his ability to run to get kind of intermediate stuff when he's outside of the pocket. What he needs to work on, like a Russell Wilson would. He's very improviser-ish like that, like a Russell Wilson or a Patrick Mahomes. Obviously not to that level. Maybe they're Wilson's level now because Wilson's declining really, really bad. But that's another story. Richardson's just really good at getting outside the pocket and using his ability to bait defenders. And you can see that in the film that we'll watch a little bit later. But he's really good at doing that. And it's something that in today's NFL, you need to do. You need to be able to be an improviser. You need to be able to get out of the pocket. Now, first and foremost, you're going to have to throw in the pocket. That's what you need to do. And Richardson might need a little bit of work on that, getting all three levels of the passing game down in the pocket. But outside the pocket, pretty good at launching it or keeping it down and keeping drives going. He's very, very good at, continuing the game and not really He's not going to fall for a sack just because, the rush is coming. He's going to make something out of that because either he's going to shake off the defender because he's so big, or he's going to evade the defender because he's so fast. That's what just the athletic ability of Anthony Richardson allows him to do. And Richardson has big game potential for his final pro. Now, he hasn't had a ton of consistency. This past season is what we're going to be looking at for stats most of the time here. But Richardson has big game potential. Against Vanderbilt this past year at Vanderbilt, it was a loss, but he went 25 for 42, not the best completion percentage ever, but it actually was one of his best completion percentages on the season, which, again, concerning, but it is. It's just a fact. He went 25 for 42, had 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. His longest pass was a 74-yard bomb. That the wide receiver had a lot of separation, but did have a really good throw on that play. So in the passing game, he has potential to have really big games. Another huge game he had against number 11 Tennessee at the time, who, was maybe not the best defense of all time, but Tennessee was a really good team this year, and they had a really good fight with them. Only lost 38-33, but 44 attempts, 24 completions was his biggest game in the air for yardage. 453 yards, absolutely insane. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, only a 54.5 completion percentage, but obviously threw 44 times and got 453 yards. So he got it kind of where it counted there. And at the same time had 17 rushes for 62 yards. So against big SEC opponents, and he had a tough schedule this year, he did pretty good in some of his games. Now, other games against lesser opponents, concerning, not the best. But Richardson has shown flashes, and he can really, really turn it on. And that's something that needs to be, shown when developing Anthony Richardson, is that those games right there, that's his potential in the NFL. That's his potential. And if you can get his completion percentage up, get his decision-making up a little bit better in the shorter game, then you're going to get longer drives because he's going to keep him going. And then sprinkle in those long passes that he can keep doing that get him these big games, then you're going to have consistency. And that's what he needs to develop. So Anthony Richardson has a lot of stuff that is pretty good that can be shown from those 2 games that I just pointed out. We're going to take a really quick break, then we'll be back with cons in the end of the episode. And we are back with the cons for Anthony Richardson. So the first con, obviously, Anthony Richardson, only a 1-year starter. We saw a little bit out of him in 2021, but only a few games played. Not a ton of stuff out of him that year. Obviously, in 2021, only 38 completions on 64 attempts, 59.4 completion percentage, 529 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Not the best sample size, but in 2022, we did get his full sample size, a full season, outside of the bowl game that he took off to prepare for the draft, obviously. He had 176 completions on 327 attempts, 53.8% completion percentage. Not a good completion percentage. We're going to aim for at least a 59-60 is generally what you want, especially in college football. In the NFL, you're going to want that more 60 to 65 to be an efficient quarterback. But Richardson coming in here, very underwhelming with his completion percentage. And I value, in my evaluations, completion percentage a lot. Again, with raw talent and athletic ability, that boosts up a guy who doesn't have great completion percentage, which I do take it into account. But completion percentage is going to dock you, especially if you have that low of a completion percentage. It's going to take you back just a little bit. He went for 2,549 yards in this past year, 17 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Good to see that he didn't have a negative touchdown to interception ratio. We've seen a lot of that with guys that get drafted really high and have really close touchdown to interception ratio, but it's because their athletic ability, is what takes them over the top. Richardson still shows good judgment in not throwing, dangerous passes. It just seems that he's more kind of throwing it inaccurately or he's throwing it away more. That's what's lowering his completion percentage, which, we can live with because a lot of that stuff is on the wide receiver at times. And as long as you're not giving it to the other team all the time or throwing the ball away that in key situations that you could have made something out of, then as long as you're not doing that, it's all right. It's all right to have that. And a 17-9 touchdown interception ratio, I can live with in college. It's pretty decent. But then again, the completion percentage is there, and you'd have to think 53.8, you're probably throwing it inaccurately a little bit, and that has been seen in his film. But again, 9 interceptions, 17 touchdowns, pretty good. Plus you have the touchdowns on the ground with 9, so 26 total touchdowns to 9 interceptions, pretty solid for a quarterback in the SEC, I'd say so myself. Very low completion percentage, as I said, very inconsistent. If we look at Anthony Richardson's game logs, very inconsistent player. Against Utah, he had a pretty good win. This was the start of his season. Very good game. 29-26 win against Utah. Very good opponent. 17 completions on 24 attempts for only 168 yards, but again, a 70.8 completion percentage. He's playing very conservative and very well. Had 11 rushes for 106 yards as well in that game. So was rushing a lot of his yards, and for the times that, he had 24 passing attempts, a decent load for a quarterback in college football. Played well, managed the ball really well, 70.8. Can't ask for anything more, won the game. That's something that is really positive. And, if Anthony Richardson had that stat line the whole entire season, just every single game, I'd probably say, yeah, this guy is pretty intriguing, safe with the ball, only gets the passing yards that he needs to get, gets the rest on the run, and gets wins against big teams. Even if a guy's not going for over 300 yards in college football, but can show me that consistency and can show me that athletic ability on the run and show me that he can, turn into, if he just gave me that every game in the NFL, I'd be pretty satisfied. I'd be pretty happy with it. That's what you get with a lot of mobile quarterbacks. And I think this guy would be more of a safe first-round pick. But it starts to go downhill. Against Kentucky, they lose 26-16. He goes 14 for 35, 143 yards, a 40% completion percentage, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Plus, didn't do much on the ground that game. There's nothing to like about that game. He put the ball in the air 35 times, had a 40% completion percentage, and gave it away 2 times and did pretty much nothing. So those are the games that I'm talking about where the athletic ability is boosting him up really, really, really to the top of the draft class. Because if he had those type of games and he's Johnny Manziel's size, right, this guy sucks. Bench him in college and never draft him, right? So that's where the athletic potential comes in so much. Because games like that are just unacceptable. We can't have that. He improved a little bit in the next game against USF, which he should. USF is not a good team. And the team, minimized his sample size, which is good. He was 10 for 18, 112 yards. But again, 55.6 completion percentage, not good. Also had 2 interceptions with no touchdowns. So, not the best performance ever. Against Tennessee, we already went over this one, but a close game, 24 for 44, had a 453 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. 54.5 completion percentage, which is about what he averaged. It went up and down, but against good teams, he was around 50 to 60%, with lower games having him at like 47. The Tennessee game, outstanding plays that he had in there, but the consistency wasn't there. Against Eastern Michigan, he had one of his best games in terms of completion percentage, but also had the least attempts he had in a single game. He was 8 for 10. He didn't really throw it that much, and it was against Eastern Washington. You don't have a lot of, good defenders there that's going to mess up your passes. So he went 8 for 10, 240 yards, obviously 80% completion percentage, but he still threw a pick. He still managed to throw a pick in 10 passes, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. The next game against Missouri, again, small sample size, 8 for 14, pretty average, 66 yards, 57.1 completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So even when he has such a small sample size, it's just not that good through the air. It's not that good. And now through these games on the run, he's doing pretty well. That game against Mizzou, 5 for 45. Against Eastern Washington, he broke one off for 45 yards. So he's still doing pretty good on the run, but in the passing game, just not too good. They played a close game against a pretty good LSU team, lost 45-35. He had 15 completions on 25 attempts, 185 and 1 touchdown, a 60% completion percentage. Pretty good game. I'd grade the LSU game pretty good for him, especially because he had 9 rushes for 109. That's a good game. The Utah game, great game. LSU game, great game. Tennessee game, had a lot of passes, so I'll give it to him. He had 453 yards. Good game. So that's about 3 good games that he's had, but the rest, Against UGA, lost 42-20. Had 18 attempts, or 18 completions on 37 attempts, 271, 1 touchdown, 48.6 completion percentage. Again, it's against UGA. I get it, but you're going to have to play good against those defenses if you want to be a good quarterback in this league. And the completion percentage was just not there. Texas A&M, big 41-24 win. And he played pretty decent. 28 attempts, 17 completions, 201 passing yards, 60.7 completion percentage, and 2 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. And then South Carolina, he followed it up 11 for 23. That's a 47.8 completion percentage. Not the best, and 112 yards. But no interceptions, 2 touchdowns. Against Vanderbilt, 25 for 42, 400 yards, 59.5% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Now, Vanderbilt's not the best team of all time. We know that. They gave up a lot of ground if you watch the film to wide receivers, so Richardson really only had to kind of lob it up there, and really he could put it anywhere, and the wide receivers would have got it. So, maybe not the best tape ever for him, but it's good to see that he did put up a 400-yard game, and he, in these last few games, or at least the games in the middle of the season, from LSU to South Carolina, a 5-game stretch, 0 interceptions. Or 4-game stretch. 0 interceptions those whole games. So he was being very conservative with the ball there, which is good. He did have games where he was 48 and 47% completion percentage in those games, but at least he wasn't turning the ball over. It was more just throwing it away or inaccuracies. So not really being dangerous with the ball, which is good because a lot of quarterbacks, when they're having not a ton of success with wide receivers getting open, or they're just being very, very inaccurate with the ball, they're going to be dangerous with the ball. And that's what you don't want. Richardson, props on him for kind of fixing that in the middle of the season. But then the last game of the season at number 16, FSU, a really good Florida State team. They kept it close, but Richardson really had no part in helping that. He was 9 for 27, one of his worst games of the season, 198 yards, a 33.3 completion percentage, his lowest of the season by about 15 percentage points. Pretty bad way to end it. He did have 3 touchdowns through the air and 1 interception. So the most touchdowns he's thrown in a game besides for that Vanderbilt game. But again, 33.3 completion percentage, very ugly game for Richardson. And that's something that he's going to need to improve. He just flat out needs to improve that. And with that inconsistency, he's extremely inaccurate. He's throwing balls all over the place, especially in short range. I mean, he can't. There's just some plays where he just can't get the ball in the right position. And that's just flat out, he just can't. He has, you can tell with all that athletic ability, he has the ability to thread the needle. But it seems that he just can't control his athletic gifts. And that's something that we can see in big quarterbacks that have a ton of athletic ability. They need to learn how to control. That's where good coaching comes in. He hasn't had that yet. So we need to figure out if he can take that knowledge and, implement that. And a lot of the time, a lot of these deep passes that are his big highlight plays, even non-deep passes, but just passes where he's being accurate, it's working off of play action, which is good, but a lot of the time that's just getting defenses completely fooled off of play action and, getting easy open passes. So it's not really evaluating how good of a quarterback is at, making other players better necessarily. That's kind of what Ryan Tannehill has worked off his whole entire Tennessee career, is just play action. And that really hasn't got him very far and hasn't got Tennessee very far. Now, Anthony Richardson is going to have to learn how to just step back in the pocket and let it loose without having the deception of a run play on every single play, basically. And he's shown that he can do that to some extent. But in Florida's offense, he's really just confined to play actions, read options, and a lot of that stuff that in the NFL is not going to work a bunch. Tua Tagovailoa has had that read option offense for a while, and this year it has worked out a little bit, but still you can see the flaws in it, and it's been exposed. So Richardson's going to have to learn how to run more of a pro style offense once he gets into the NFL, and hopefully he can learn how to do that. A lot of this stuff with Richardson being a raw prospect is just him learning how to do different things. And hopefully he'll be able to translate that over, but I don't think that he's going to be able to take that so smoothly. It's very hard to adapt to an offensive play style that you really haven't had a ton of experience in and haven't worked well in either. Another con is that he was 6-6 in his final collegiate season. In the SEC, at a top program like Florida, you want usually a team that has an elite quarterback to perform well. Well, Florida didn't really perform well. As I said, they lost to Vanderbilt. Not a great game there. And they played pretty much all their teams close. A game against USF, that was a 3-point game. And that was one of their wins. I mean, the strength of schedule really hard, but he wasn't really able to pull off any wins against impressive opponents. A&M wasn't good this year. South Carolina, not very good this year. Same with Missouri. Eastern Washington's an FCS team. USF is a bottom, not a Power 5 team. Utah was their only impressive win, and that was at the start of the season. So there wasn't really a lot of improvement there, getting wins. And, being a winner in college, with raw athletic talent isn't always the biggest thing, but you'd like Anthony Richardson in as much close games as he was in to be able to pull out wins at the last minute, and he wasn't able to do that. Another stat that I think is very telling here is that Richardson had a 49.1% completion percentage against AP top 25 opponents. So a below 50% completion percentage against good teams. Again, that plays into you want him to play good against top talent, especially when you're in the SEC. And it seems like most of his good passing days came against teams that, weren't very good. And when you're going to play against teams that are in the NFL that have the top crop of those teams that you're playing, those AP top 25 teams, you're going to face them every day. Even the fifth string corners are going to be that talent. You're going to want to have a good completion percentage against them. And if he can't do that at the collegiate level, it's going to be tough for him to do that at the NFL level. And so that's it for the cons and the pros of Anthony Richardson. So let's look at some of this film really quick that I'm just going to talk you through. We're going to start off against the game against Utah. First play, Richardson has play action, and it's a read option. He's just going to get a few yards here. Next one, just a shotgun play. Richardson, boom, right in there to Pearsall. Decent intermediate pass here for Richardson. This next one gets out, shakes a tackle, slides down. Pretty good play. Another one right across the middle into Pearsall. Had some good plays there that were right across the middle. Richardson against Kentucky. This one, Richardson's going to sit. He's going to watch and get into the seam to Pearsall. Pearsall was one of his top targets during the season. This one's a play action bootleg. He's going to throw off his back foot into number 3 and right on the sideline toe tap, right in between two defenders. That was a really good throw. And that's what I'm saying when he's an improviser and he gets outside of the pocket. Richardson can really, in those design plays, can really get out there and find the hole in the defense. He does it really well. And again, that was a play action play. So, he does a lot of his work out of play action. This one, another play action in the red zone, pump fake and into the middle. So he can check down every once in a while. He has that ability, but not a lot of crossers, intermediate stuff that has been super super accurate for him, and a lot of it is working out of play action. Here against Tennessee, Richardson's going to fake handoff again, bootleg. He's going to step up and he's going to go for Pearsall on the sideline. A little bit behind Pearsall. He has to turn for that. So the accuracy when it's not like total go routes isn't the best. Speed option for Richardson. You can really see the speed here. Gets in the end zone against a good team in Tennessee. So there's a lot to like about Richardson, but it's the inconsistency that really kind of bites him in the ass here. And that's what's going to hinder his stock, is that his production on the field just hasn't been the best. There's been a ton of flashes, but not the best. So my comparisons for him, he's a B level Cam Newton as ceiling. He's not going to be Cam Newton. He's just not going to be that level. He's probably never going to win an MVP or anything. But he's more of a B level Cam Newton. He could be a starter in the NFL. He definitely could be a starter in the NFL with all those flashes that he's had, and he can have a long career. But he's just not going to be Cam Newton with his completion percentage being that low and having that much inconsistency. It's going to take a couple years for him to really adapt to the NFL, and when he's adapted, I don't think he's just going to be to that talent. And I think his floor is Malik Willis. As I said, Malik Willis was one of my lowest grade players I've ever had on this podcast. I don't think Malik Willis has done good in the NFL so far, and I don't think he will do good. I think Malik Willis is probably going to flame out of the NFL by the end of his rookie contract, which is unfortunate for him, and I wish that he does do well. But just looking at it from my perspective, I think that's where he's going. So, and I think Anthony Richardson could fall into the same thing if he doesn't develop properly. Like if he got onto Tennessee and didn't have the proper coaches to develop him, I think that's what can happen to him. And that's what happens with the raw talent. It's a 50-50 shot, and you just got to take your chances. And unfortunately, that's just kind of how it happens. So my grade for Anthony Richardson is a C+ to a B-. I'd grade him in the late second round to mid third round range. I think is where he should go. Where I think he's going to go is probably early second, late first round, but I'm going to put him in that late second round to mid third round type of range is where I'd select him. Just so much athletic ability, a lot to love about Anthony Richardson, but he's a really, really risky pick, really boomer bust with his production in college. So it's going to be tough to see how Anthony Richardson does. But for me, I'm going to aim towards the not doing as well as people tend to value him as. So that's going to be it for the Scouting Board episode 8. I hope you guys enjoyed that evaluation of Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson. We're going to be back with Jake Haener, Fresno State's quarterback, for the next episode. That should be coming out soon. So look out for that. My other podcast, Second Take, that I do with my buddies Alejandro and Aiden, about all sports, not just scouting for NFL players. That is our latest episode's out right now. You can go check that out on YouTube, on this YouTube page if you're watching this on YouTube, listening to this on YouTube. Or you can also listen to that on any Spotify, or any podcast platform by just looking up Second Take. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Also, you guys can look at our writing publications on medium.com. Also, look up Second Take. You can read any of me and Alejandro's articles. We write a lot on there. Any sports topics, especially NFL, if you like any NFL stuff. That's not just scouting. Go check it over there. You can also check my Twitter at BillySRP or check us on Instagram at Second Take Show. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.